Hello everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is your look at the astrology for December 15th through 21st, 2025. We've got a lot of things going on in December. In fact, when I sit down each year and I look at the months ahead, and I'm like, what are the months that really either stand out or are shift points or inflection points, and December was always going to be one of those months. So I know that there's a lot of things going on in the sky, a lot of things last week that are, let's say, spilling over into this week. But this week we have a Sagittarius New Moon. This is going to be at 28 degrees, right on what's called the galactic center. So it's a very otherworldly Sagittarius New Moon. We also have Mars in Capricorn. This is an energy that's going to take us into the new year, which in a way kind of puts us in advance of the sort of things we typically do this time of year when we get into January. What are the things that I want to change? What are my goals? What are my aspirations? What are the concrete steps I'm taking? And Mars is again giving us an advance on that energy. But that said, before I get too far, just want to reintroduce myself. My name is Katie Sweetman, and I'm an astrologer and psychic medium located here in the Central Hills, rolling Central Hills of Maryland. And every week we gather live to look at the astrology. You hear me say it every week. The astrology is 50%. And you are the other 50%. Astrology is an energy, it's a framework of time and how we live time. And even I would, as I said in the introduction, that, I look ahead towards the year, I look at the months, what's happening. It's always a potential, and we all live it differently. So for some of us, especially for those who have a lot of things in what are called mutable signs, Pisces, Virgo, Sagittarius, and I'm missing one, Gemini, this time, and even the eclipses of September, this time, December, is really bringing into the forefront the eclipse, the energy that was seeded back in September. So it's a month that's I realize we're halfway in at this point, but it's a little bit busy. Things are happening, things are going on. And for me, I always listen for the transit. It's a personal philosophy. I say it to my clients. I know some of you are my clients, but listen for the transit. So for example, last week, Mars square Saturn. It's a heavy astrology aspect, and maybe you experienced it feeling sort of that heavy energy, but it's to listen for how is it manifesting in your life. Because when I was talking about Mars square Saturn last week, I got some pushback from people that said that I was sugarcoating the transit. I want to be like, I'm a Scorpio, I don't sugarcoat, but I'm a Sag rising, so I want to give a very a wider point of view on what is Mars and what is Saturn, for example. And even as that was happening, I found myself very much to that transit in the well, this is what I believe in, this is how I see things. And that was very much the energy of that transit, because the square was happening between Sagittarius and Pisces, two signs that really help us to find a point of view, whether that point of view is educational Sagittarius or worldly Sagittarius, or even looking within Pisces. So listen for, let's say in the case of this week's astrology, the Sagittarius New Moon, you have your own relationship with the sign of Sagittarius, the archetype, the energies. And even if you're scratching your head and saying, but I'm not a Sagittarius, but you have the Sagittarius somewhere in your astrology. And Sagittarius as a whole, it's the ninth sign of the zodiac. It's nearing towards the end of the zodiac when we get to Sagittarius season. It is an energy that makes us want more out of life. I want more. It doesn't have to be money or fame, but wanting more out of your life means you want to learn something. You want to fulfill your life. You want like a deeper sense of mission and purpose. Sagittarius wants more, and it looks towards the world to receive that or to gain that. And whether it's going to college or university, whether it's reading all the books, that knowledge, that worldly knowledge that Sagittarius is famous for. When you get to different points in your life where you are yearning for something that you can't quite name, that's Jupiter. That's the ruling planet of Sagittarius is Jupiter. So you are tapping into an energy, an archetype. It doesn't matter what time of the year it is. It doesn't matter where the planets are. The planets are just reflective of an energy that is existential to life. So without Sagittarius and even Pisces, the last sign of the zodiac, we wouldn't look outside of ourselves. We wouldn't look up. We wouldn't question. We wouldn't even ask questions. We wouldn't lean into philosophy. We wouldn't look beyond what we know. And that's one of the roles of Sagittarius, and by extension Pisces, also ruled by Jupiter, and how Jupiter really pushes us for growth. And I know that that's a word that's very often used for Jupiter and Sagittarius. What does that mean? It means that our lives need to grow. We can't keep staying in the same place. It is the growth that comes out of our time in Scorpio symbolically. Scorpio is the sign that comes before Sagittarius. And through Scorpio, we are really looking inward and questioning ourselves. And sometimes with that discomfort of questioning ourselves, that we can really open up to the energies of Sagittarius. And the sun is not in Scorpio, hasn't been in Scorpio for a month, but I always look at the zodiac as a greater whole. It's a ladder. It's a ladder of progression. And as we get to, let's say, deeper into Sagittarius season, but even this weekend on the 21st, we're going to go into Capricorn season. Where is the ladder taking us, for example? So before we get into the Sagittarius New Moon, I just want to remind everybody that I am doing a webinar on Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern. I know some of you, that's not the most convenient time, but I am recording it. So you can still sign up for my webinar, The Astrology of 2026, and learn about what is going on in the year ahead. And I will talk about those months in 2026 that I have a little question mark as an astrologer that I've circled because it's a natural shift point or it's an inflection point, and how 2026 is a time of new beginnings. We've got Saturn and Neptune in Aries. We have Uranus in Gemini. We have not seen these shifts. We got a little bit of a taste of it in 2025, but 2026 is really bringing us into some sort of new time, new cycle, new era. So I'll also do a sign-by-sign guide so you can listen for what this is going to mean for your rising sign. So you can go to my show notes or go to empoweringastrology.com and sign up for my webinar, The Astrology of 2026. If you cannot join live, you can still get the replay, as I said, and it will show up in the account in which you register for the webinar. So let's dive into the astrology of this week. We have Mars, if not now, very soon, it's going to be in Capricorn. Mars is always the drive and the power of the sky. For example, when you get out of bed in the morning, I hope you do, you need that drive and that power to really step into your day. That's symbolic of Mars. And Mars, wherever it is in the sky, is giving that energy towards. Now, in Sagittarius, where it was for the last 6 weeks, that drive and that power was towards a sign that's very philosophical, educational, travel, exploration. Maybe we have opinions with Mars in Sagittarius. With Mars going into Capricorn, it says the next 6 weeks, this takes us into the end of January 2026. Our drive is through Capricorn, Saturn. Time, focus, organization, accountability, maturity. It's growth, but it's not the growth of Sagittarius. It's something that's more concrete. And as much as I love Saturn, Saturn is still Saturn, and Saturn is setting higher bars for us. Why do I say Saturn? Because Saturn is what's called the ruling sign of Capricorn. So With Mars in Capricorn, it's going to be in the sign of what it's called exaltation. This is a little bit of a traditional point, but if you are learning astrology, really study the exaltations because it'll give you a deeper understanding of each of the planets, except for Mercury, because Mercury doesn't have an exaltation. In English, it says that Mars does its best work in Capricorn, the sign of his exaltation. So we take that drive, that power, that focus, that leadership, and it does really great work in the sign of Capricorn. Maturity, responsibility, measured growth, reaching towards our goals and our ambitions and duties and responsibilities. So how, and this is the part that's the 50% that's you, how are you going to use this energy? What are you going to apply it towards? Some days we wake up with these transits and we really feel it. We really feel it pressing and motivating us. And some days you look at my reports and you're like, well, I don't feel it, Katie. Tap into it. It's there. And we all have a Mars and we all need to find our Mars. Mars is the first, the planet that rules the first sign of the zodiac. That's Aries. We can't make things happen in our lives if we're always, for example, in our head. We need to find our Mars. We need to find our power, our individuality, our ability to stand on our 2 feet, for example. So we have Mars in Capricorn, and Mars is pulling away from some pretty tense astrology. It had the square to Saturn last week. It had the square to Neptune this weekend. And it will be in opposition, I think, to Jupiter by the end of January, but that's for another broadcast. So Mars is now in Capricorn, but the real big news for this week is the Sagittarius New Moon. So every 4 weeks, we have a new moon, not Sagittarius New Moon. We have a new moon. And that new moon is like, it changes the set. It turns our focus and it puts it towards a different sign and by extension, a different part of our lives. Sagittarius is somewhere in your astrology. It could be a career sign. It could be a health and wellness sign. It could be your rising sign. It could be your sun sign. Happy birthday, Sagittarius. And wherever that energy of the new moon occurs, and when I go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, you'll get a refresher of this, that area of your life is renewed. And over the next 4 weeks, there could be events, there could be initiatives, there could be a greater focus on that part of your life. So for example, if Sagittarius is your career sign, you are Virgo or Virgo rising, then that sense of renewal comes to your career. It says that your career is the big focus for the next 4 weeks. If it's not career, it's your duties and responsibilities, it's your worldly life and your public reputation. This new moon, as I said in the introduction, it's on the galactic center. I don't typically talk about the galactic center, but something that I've noticed as an astrologer, that last 10 degrees of the zodiac, so 20-ish Sagittarius all the way to 2959 Sagittarius. I don't say 0 Capricorn because then 0 Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, but that last 10 degrees of Sagittarius aligns with the Milky Way. This time of year, we can't see it because the sun is in the way, but 6 months from now, for example, that's the time when you can best see the Milky Way. So when the sun is in Sagittarius, especially in those last 10 days of Sagittarius, it's passing through a part of the sky that points us back to the deepest parts of space. Well, maybe not the deepest parts of space, but certainly this part of space that we are all rotating around. It's the galactic center. At the center of our galaxy is a supermassive black hole. It's called Sagittarius A. So I've noticed that there is an otherworldly quality to these last few degrees of Sagittarius. In particular, the galactic center is presently located in tropical astrology. I say tropical astrology because the tropical zodiac doesn't quite match the sky. That's sidereal astrology or sidereal zodiac. But in tropical astrology, 26, 27 degrees is the galactic center. And that space, again, that part of the zodiac is a very otherworldly quality. If you have a sun there, or you're rising, or major planets in those last few degrees of Sagittarius, you can feel otherworldly. It's it's not just, Sagittarius is the world, but with that part of the zodiac, it takes us into the stars. It makes us really look towards something much greater than ourselves. So for, by extension, over the next 4 weeks, that's something that we need to do. We need to open up our eyes. Sagittarius is a fire sign, fire of revelation, fire of the torch, fire of motivation, and look towards the heavens, metaphorically, literally, and question and ponder and seek and explore and try to find answers. If Sagittarius typically finds answers outside of itself, this part of the zodiac finds answers outside of this planet, symbolically speaking. So we need to attune to our intuition, attune to our listening, our ears, our listening for the transit, and feel for how this energy is showing up in our lives. Does it mean there's going to be space aliens? Probably not, but it sort of makes us more aware that we're just one planet as part of this greater whole of our galaxy. This new moon is also, it will be at 8:44 degrees p.m. Eastern. For me, I'm on the East Coast of the United States. It'll be 5:44 p.m. West Coast United States for those that are on the West Coast. And more importantly, this new moon squares the nodes. So this is why December was a month, in addition to the Mars-Saturn square, the Mars-Neptune square, where I was really looking at December, because it invokes the lunar nodes, which means it invokes the solar eclipse that we had back on September 21st. That's the thing about eclipses. Yes, the eclipse was 3 months ago, but sometimes it takes 3 months to see the eclipse. The weird thing about eclipses is sometimes we see the event before the eclipse. And I've noticed that the 3 months after an eclipse, which is 3 months before an eclipse, is typically a very interesting time. So the next solar eclipse, and I talked about this last week, is going to be February 17th. It will be in Aquarius. It is our first eclipse in Aquarius. We haven't had eclipses in Aquarius since 2017, 2018. But this eclipse, we started to see the 3 months before, back in November. So that said, we're in this crossroads with this new moon. It says that the next 4 weeks might be very important. Further, this is a new moon that squares Saturn and Neptune. I've noticed just in general with a Saturn square and with a new moon, Saturn then becomes a very prominent energy and archetype over the next 4 weeks. We need to get things done. We need to figure out, in the case of Sag or Pisces, which is where Saturn is located at the moment, we need to figure out what we believe in. What do we stand for? What do we think is true? There's a sense of conviction. There's a sense of faith with both these signs. Faith can mean a lot of different things. Sometimes it's just faith that everything will be okay. It doesn't have to be the faith of religion, but faith that, maybe there is, something out there that will work out. Squaring Saturn, it also says that it's a little bit of a reality check over the next 4 weeks. We need to show up for Saturn. I remember, when I try to explain Saturn to people, at least from an energy, I talk about the first time I taught a class, an astrology class, and I go into the room, and people are kind of hanging out and talking before the class, and I'm kind of like in that mindset, and then I'm like, wait a second, they're here for me. I'm not the student, I'm the teacher. So Saturn says you need to now be in a position of maturity, responsibility, and authority. So we may need to do that in a way that is relevant to our lives in a place of maturity, responsibility, and authority over the next 4 weeks. The new moon is square Neptune. This one's a little bit trickier because both those two planets, Saturn and Neptune, are together in the sky. And Saturn in Pisces and Saturn conjunct Neptune in Pisces, at least until the new year, it's really digging at very existential questions and spiritual questions. And it's not enough to build or to tick the boxes and say, look at all the things that I've achieved in life, because Neptune says, for what? For what purpose? And maybe there's some really big existential questions that we're all mulling over the next 4 weeks. I know this doesn't sound very fun, but it's like if we really open up our eyes and we tap into that Sagittarius wonder, but at the same time look at our lives and make some concrete decisions and the things that we want to change. And maybe this is a new moon that's about realigning our values and realigning our lives to the things that really truly matter to us and matter to our hearts, for example. This new moon points over towards Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter is the ruling planet of this new moon, and Cancer receives the energy of the new moon. Cancer it's a funny dichotomy because I'm talking about the galactic center, I'm talking about off-world and sort of opening up our eyes in the sense of wonder, and Cancer brings it right back home. It says that there's something about family in the past and memories. Perhaps it's the household, perhaps it's bigger philosophical questions about where's home and who is home. And Cancer is also Sagittarius's 8th sign. So it adds to that soul-searching quality, that inner work that we see whenever there is an 8th house transit with a new moon. A need to shed the past, a need to let go of something that we've been holding on to, maybe matters of legacies and inheritances. And I mean that metaphorically because we all inherit something, we all have legacies, and perhaps getting very clear about what we don't want to bring with us into a new chapter and a new cycle. So it's a big new moon. It's a new moon that whatever is going on over the next 4 weeks, it ties to Saturn and Pisces and whatever this larger phase and chapter that we've been navigating since Saturn went into Pisces. Saturn went to Pisces in March of 2023. It ties into Neptune and Pisces and whatever very subtle themes. And this is something that I talked about a couple weeks ago. Whatever subtle themes that we've been navigating since Neptune went into Pisces in 2011 and 2012. And it also talks about, and I'm sort of making this little gesture with my hands because Sag and even Pisces, they talk about direction. It's not informational direction, it's purposeful direction. Like, what's the direction of my life? Where am I headed? Where am I going? And so these could be big themes over the next 4 weeks. So it's a little bit of a complicated new moon, and again, when we go through each of the 12 zodiac signs in a moment, we'll tap into what this new moon is opening up in your chart over the next 4 weeks. So there you go. That is your look at the astrology of this week. I keep wanting to say August. I don't know why, because it is bitterly cold outside, at least where I am. December 15th through 21st of 2025. I know it's going to be the solstice on Sunday. Let's save that and feature it next week. The solstice is always, whether you are in the northern hemisphere or southern hemisphere, it's always an important transition point. It brings us into a new chapter. It also continues this journey into the latter signs of the zodiac. So let's go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, starting with Aries. Aries, so Mars is your planet, and as you know, or maybe you don't know because we talked about this last week, Mars is now in Capricorn. So the energy shifts because Mars rules you, and it now pulls it towards your career sign. The last 6 weeks have been very philosophical, perhaps a lot of travel, needing to share your points of view, get very clear about what you believe in and stand for. But Mars in Capricorn is about really making this all concrete, because for the next 6 weeks, and this will take you into the end of January 2026, your focus is either your professional life, your worldly duties and responsibilities, the title after your name, your goals and ambitions, and with Mars in Capricorn, using this energy to take a step up in your life. Of course, this is going to mean different things to different Aries, but it's something for you to really feel into and step into. If you have a goal and ambition, here's Mars. Now, the caveat to all this and, especially as we have this new moon, is that there's just a lot of things going on in your 12th. And we've been talking about this for the past 2 years at this point. You have Neptune at the end of your 12th. You have Saturn at the end of the 12th. You have the North Node in the 12th. So what does this mean? You're being pushed out into the world with Mars in Capricorn. But the irony is that you're also in a time in your life where something is shifting and changing. Things are leaving your life. It's like you're in the world, but you can't be of the world. I don't know if that makes sense. You need to make sure that you're aligning yourself with your deeper sense of mission and purpose in the world, your faith, your truth, your meaning, your spirituality. And that could be a way of being in the world, but not necessarily of the world. But on a very surface level, it's typically hustle time when Mars goes into Capricorn over the next 6 weeks. Then there's the Sagittarius New Moon. And as I was saying a few moments ago, these bigger questions about faith and truth and meaning. The Sagittarius New Moon says that for the next 4 weeks, your ninth, your sense of view of the world, travel, education, is going to be a very short-term priority for you. That's where the new beginnings are. But that new moon squares Saturn. You're at a crossroads. You need to figure out and stand behind or stand up for what you believe in, what you think is true. You can't be on the fence anymore, because the Saturn square says you need to make a commitment, you need to make a declaration, even if it's a no. The square to Neptune brings up a lot of deep emotions and feelings, and maybe these are feelings that you were kind of tapping into this past weekend when Mars was squared Neptune. But it is overall a very existential, spiritual, seeking knowledge and wisdom next 4 weeks for you. And with Mars and Capricorn, Mars is saying, what are we going to do about it? And Capricorn is to make something real and make something concrete. Taurus. So Venus is your planet, and Venus, it's in Sagittarius at the moment. I think it's next week it goes into Capricorn. And right now, Venus is there's a lot of things going on in the sky in Sagittarius. In fact, was looking at the chart of the new moon, but the Venus is with the new moon at the time of the new moon, so which means Venus is square Saturn and Venus is square Neptune. English. Sagittarius is something called your 8th sign. Every time the sun goes through Sagittarius this time of year, end of November, beginning of December, it is your time to go inward. The 8th always brings up a time of personal transformation, themes of intimacy, trust, vulnerability, deep emotions, and also the energy of rebirth. Again, every year, this time each year. The new moon says that this is your short-term focus and priority for the next 4 weeks. This is where new beginnings are happening. So on a very surface level, I'm just an example. Maybe you're like, you know what? Maybe in the new year, I want to go into therapy because maybe it's time to really focus on my emotional health and wellness. So this would be a new moon to really set that intention. And then as you go into the new year and up until the new moon that will be in January, then you have this time we can focus on your emotional health and wellness. It might be something else. Maybe this is a time that's very financial in nature. Maybe this new moon says I need to really focus on my finances, my spending, my debts, the things I have access to, my benefits, and that's one of the ways in which I'm really focusing my time for the next 4 weeks. This new moon, it makes something called a square to Saturn and Neptune. These are two planets that are in what's called your 11th. Saturn has been there since 2023. Neptune's been there since 2011, 2012. But overall, Saturn has been saying for the past 2 years that your long-term focus and priority has been friendships and community. Maybe you've needed to shift your friends and community, clear out old friendships, or get very clear about the types of friends and community that you want to have in your life. And there is a point of tension with this new moon, and even with the Venus square Saturn and Neptune, where something might come up between you and a friend, or a need to have deeper intimacy, trust, and vulnerability between you and a friend. Or maybe it's about looking towards the world and having to examine a lot of conflicting emotions that come up. Neptune's, that's a other conversation, because it's very subtle to talk about what Neptune's time in Pisces has meant for you, but Saturn is very concrete. And there's something, again, especially with Venus square Saturn with this new moon and over the next 4 weeks, where you need to get very real about something. And if something is in your way about really getting real, then what is the inner work that you're going to do in order to make that happen? Mars is also in Capricorn, and Capricorn is a fellow earth sign. So for the next 6 weeks, the power, the drive, and the motivation is actually, what do you believe in? What do you stand for? What do you think is true? You could be traveling more in the next 6 weeks, focusing on your education. But in general, this is a period over the next 6 weeks to really open up your eyes and to share your faith, your truth, your meaning, your philosophy with others. Gemini. So Mercury is your planet, and Mercury is hanging out in Sagittarius with the sun. We're going to have a Sagittarius New Moon this week. And Sagittarius is a sign where Mercury really wants to like travel and explore and see the world. Classically speaking, Mercury is in its detriment in Sagittarius, but it's because Mercury loses a little bit of its flexibility and curiosity with it when it's in Sagittarius. And that's just a little bit of a caution, because Mercury always needs to have curiosity. It needs to keep its options open. It needs to not, stand in that Sagittarius groove where it's like, this is true. Gemini's like, what? I don't know. Maybe it's not true. Let's find out. So that's a new moon that talks about faith and truth and meaning and what do you believe in and what do you stand for. Maybe at the same time, this is a new moon to get, step out of those hills that sometimes we want to die on a little bit. We're like, no, this is true. Well, maybe it's a new moon to reconsider that, for example. This new moon also highlights your relationship sign. And so the next 4 weeks, on one hand, if you are in a serious relationship, it could be a time where the relationship has a lot of focus and priority. If you're not in a relationship, this could be a new moon to set intentions to meet people, or you just want to be more social. And this could be a new moon where new people are coming in and out of your life. This new moon, it squares Saturn. Saturn is in something called your career sign. It's been there since March of 2023. And that's saying to you that this is a new moon that's putting you at a crossroads. It connects to the solar eclipse that we had back on September 21st. And that solar eclipse was in your home environment, your living situation, your household. Maybe you're planning for a move. Maybe you're moving in with a partner. Maybe you're thinking about the future. It doesn't have to be. These are just examples. But this new moon really puts some pressure and focus on your astrology. It talks about where you headed. What's your priorities? Where are you putting your time and your energy? Saturn also in your 10th. What do you want to be when you grow up? Are you taking your duties and responsibilities seriously? We may need to get to the full moon to see how this is, these sort of seeds with this new moon are really taking shape and taking root. But it's moving your life, and perhaps the next 4 weeks are a little event-oriented along the realms of career and the household, but also relationships. Every Gemini rising will live this time differently, but Saturn being Saturn, and your Mercury is square Saturn right now, always set the bar higher for yourself. Don't beat yourself up with that bar, but set the bar higher for yourself. Show up on time, do the right thing, and that's where we can really positively work with the energies of Saturn. Cancer. So the moon is your planet, and the moon right now is coming towards the end of Scorpio. It's going to be in Scorpio for the next couple of days. It's a space for you that talks about your creativity, your self-expression, your identity, and then you get into Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, the moon's in Sagittarius. We're actually coming to the end of the lunar cycle, and you who are ruled by the moon, you typically feel the ebbs and flow of the lunar cycle. Wednesday, Thursday, and into the beginning of Friday, we're in the dark of the moon. It's not a time to start things. It's a time to rest, to go within, to connect to our intuition, and to prepare for the next cycle ahead. The Sagittarius New Moon on sorry, I just had a little glitch in my brain. The Sagittarius New Moon on the 19th is in something called year 6. It says for the next 4 weeks, your short-term focus and priority is health and wellness, your work and projects, the day-to-day functions of your life. It doesn't sound very glamorous, but you have to understand that our lives need day-to-day functions. We need to manage our day-to-day lives. When there is no plans in place, when there's no managing our day-to-day functions, it's chaos. So this is a new moon that's saying this is the time to really look at your schedule, how you're showing up on things, where you're putting your time towards, and maybe start to make some changes. With the new moon square Saturn and Neptune, it's bringing a lot of deeper philosophical and existential qualities to the next 4 weeks. And maybe as you make changes in your day-to-day life or how you're showing up and where you're showing up, it now needs to be more aligned with your sense of principles or your beliefs, or even how you see the world, for example. This new moon, I already said health and wellness, but this is a time to really focus on your physical health and wellness, your diet, your fitness, your nutrition, especially with Mercury and Venus square Saturn, to make choices that are actually supportive towards the future. You have a Sagittarius new moon roughly this time each year. This comes before the beginning of the year, so it's you're sort of getting a start on whatever healthy changes and resolutions that you may do for the new year. That said, Mars is going into Capricorn, and Capricorn is your 7th sign. So over the next 6 weeks, this takes us into the new year, into the end of January. Mars is heating up relationships. Now, relationships come in a lot of different forms. We have primary relationships. We have what I like to call capital R relationships. Perhaps we're in a partnership, or perhaps we have really significant people in our lives. But this is all relationships. It's how you connect, relate, and socialize with people. And Mars, typically, wherever Mars is, that's the action, that's the focus. And so things may come to the forefront between you and another person, or you and a partner, or it's a busy time, you're meeting new people. But sometimes, and I'm just saying for those for whom this is relevant, Mars can poke at something that has already been bubbling beneath the surface, perhaps even for a couple of months or longer. And Mars brings it to the forefront. So if you are, for example, in a relationship and you're really on the fence about this person, here comes Mars. And Mars is not an ambivalent planet. It has wants and needs, and sometimes it can really shake things up, depends. But if you want to have more social connection in your life, if you want to be more attentive to the needs and wants of other people, here's Mars in Capricorn. And this is preceding, eventually we'll have a Capricorn new moon in the middle of January, and that will be the time to really focus on relationships and other people. Leo, so the sun is your planet, and the sun, as I record this, the sun is coming to those last degrees of Sagittarius. And as I was saying in the introduction, this part of the sky is the deepest parts of space for us, at least. It's our galactic center. And if we could see the Milky Way, which we can't this time of year, but if we could see the Milky Way, we would see that part is what we are rotating around, for example. So when the sun is in this part of the sky, it helps you to turn towards what is beyond this world, symbolically, metaphorically. It helps you to open up your eyes, to have wonder, to seek, to explore. And Sagittarius in general is a sign that inspires us to want more out of life. I want to grow. I want to see the world. I want to learn. I want to read things. I want to get the degree, for example. There's a Sagittarius New Moon on the 19th, so Friday, and that Sagittarius New Moon is going to be in something called your fifth sign. Over the next 4 weeks, the short-term focus and priority, your new beginnings and renewals are going to come from expressing yourself, finding your creativity, coming back to that passion and joy and spark of life. These are themes that typically Leo is known for. Even, Leo isn't just that diva archetype that I think everybody thinks of when they think of Leo. Leo is actually the sign of the sun. And it's a reminder, especially over the next 4 weeks, for you to shine. Whether you are Leo rising, whether you are Leo sun, it is to shine. Even if you do it in quiet ways, because you need the next 4 weeks. And the sun is typically, in Sagittarius, we have a Sagittarius New Moon typically this time each year. It is a time for you to renew yourself, to get back that spark, to have fun. You're like, great, thanks. So this is a new moon that at the same time, ironically, is asking you, who are you and who are you not? And the Saturn and Neptune conjunction is in something called your eighth. So if you're burnt out, for example, then the question is why? Why are you burnt out? If you're not expressing who you are, or you're not taking yourself and taking your talent seriously, then the question again is why? Because anything in the eighth is that deeper work that we all have to do to ask sometimes very uncomfortable questions. And sometimes to even take a look at how we are self-sabotaging or how we are getting in our own way. Saturn has been in your eighth since March of 2023. It is not the easiest of transits because the past 2.5 years have been a time of a lot of emotional heavy lifting and needing to really make a long-term priority your psyche and your emotional health and wellness. Maybe you've done a lot of inner work over the last 2.5 years, but with Saturn getting ready to leave Pisces, which it will in February, maybe this new moon is also sort of the result of the hard work. It's like, well, who are you? After stripping away all these layers over the past 2.5 years, who are you? And maybe to get some of your spark and mojo back after a lot of that deep work with Saturn in the eighth. But Jupiter is the energy of the new moon is pointing towards your 12th. We got energy of the 8th and the 12th. So this is inner work, 8th, letting things go, the psyche. But the 12th is also your spirituality and what do you believe in. And the time that you really look within yourself. And the energy of the new moon pointing towards the 12th gives you an opportunity to let something go. So for example, especially as we go into the new year, we're sort of staring down the barrel of 2026, what do you not want to bring with you into the new year? It could be a belief, it could be a habit, it could be an attachment, because the new moon is really helping you to look at yourself and to make the decision to let something go and to leave it in 2025. Also, Mars is in Capricorn, and Capricorn is something called your sixth sign. So you get this, sort of advanced motivation before the new year to really get on top of things, to focus on your health and wellness, to get more exercise. For example, when Mars is in your sixth, which happens every 2 years, you have typically a lot of energy. You can put that towards projects, you can put that towards work, and Mars in the sixth can be a workaholic, but I think a better way to do Mars in the sixth is to get a lot of fresh air and physical activity, because then Mars is having a chance to channel its energy. But it is a busy time and for the next 6 weeks, and maybe you've got a lot of projects as you go into the new year, and Mars is giving you focus and energy, but also hustle to put things in order and to get things in place as you go in 2026. Virgo. So Mercury is your planet, and Mercury is presently in Sagittarius. And so the energy of Sagittarius, which is where a lot of things are happening right now, we have a Sagittarius New Moon this week, that is something called your fourth. The fourth, it's home, it's family, it's roots, it's foundation. So you started, for example, you started the retrograde of November in Sagittarius. Mercury was in Sagittarius. Mercury went back into Scorpio, but then it came back into Sagittarius. I think it was last week. So whatever is going on right now, and perhaps even the energy of the new moon on the 19th later this week, it's connected to some story that's been throughout October, November, perhaps even longer. And this new moon gives you an opportunity to put things in order, to make things concrete, because this new moon and your Mercury is going to be square Saturn in your relationship sign. We've been talking about this for the last 2.5 years almost, but you, Virgo, have had Saturn in what's called your 7th sign of relationships since March of 2023. This means different things to different Virgos, but in general, relationships have been your long-term priority over the past 2.5 years, because Saturn reminds us that we can't do life alone and that our relationships need to be balanced and in order. I know it's not always that easy because relationships are complicated, but relationships also cannot be out of balance, meaning you give so much and receive so little. Not that Saturn is transactional. Saturn is just, no, it has to be regenerative. It has to be sustainable for the future. If it's not sustainable, if you're putting everybody first and not getting your needs met, for example. So relationships have been a priority, and maybe you've started a relationship, maybe there's been a marriage or a partnership, maybe there's been some big changes in a partnership. Even if you're not in a relationship, it's just a reminder that you're not an island. You need connection. So going back to this new moon, it says that next 4 weeks, your short-term focus and priority and where you're going to see new beginnings potentially is in the household, the home, your living situation. It could be something around a family member. It could be something about a past, a memory. It could be about you and a partner or you in a relationship. But this is a new moon that's evoking the solar eclipse that we had back on September 21st. So it's bringing the eclipse to a forefront. It's just in general a very dynamic time to be a Virgo. It's not a quiet time to be a Virgo rising. And so things are happening, and this could be a very busy time as you go into the new year. That said, we do now have Mars in Capricorn. Capricorn is something called your 5th sign, and it says that in spite of all of these potential shifts and changes over the next 4 weeks, don't forget about the things that light you up and give you joy and give you passion. Mars in the 5th is to find your creativity. Even if you're like, but wait a second, I don't do art. But this isn't about art. This is taking the best of yourself and putting it into something. This is getting back to that spark of life, for example. So that's where a lot of the drive and the movement of the chart is as you go in, even into the end of January. But short-term priority is your home, is your family, your living situation. Jupiter receives the energy of this new moon, and that's your 11th. It's a time to rely on friends and community, but it's also a time to look towards the future and to make sure that you and another person are on the same page. Libra. So Venus is your planet, and right now Venus is in Sagittarius. I think it's next week it goes into Capricorn. At present, Venus is in a little bit of a party with Mercury and the Sun. Up until just today, perhaps even right now, it was also included Mars in the same sign. This is a time where, especially with Venus square the lunar nodes and Venus square Saturn and Neptune as we go throughout the week, it's a little bit of a crossroads for you. To have a Sagittarius new moon says that the next 4 weeks, your short-term priority could be education, it could be conversations, ideas, information, taking classes, how you write, how you speak, and how you communicate. I didn't say communicate already. And in general, it's a very busy time. This already has been a busy time in your astrology even before this new moon. This new moon, it's taking the energy and it's pointing it towards your career. Jupiter in Cancer, your career sign, receives the energy of I keep wanting to say eclipse, but it's a new moon, receives the energy of the new moon. So this could be a time where you need to make a choice, a decision about your career, or maybe you're sharing something that you've written, or you're sharing what you believe in, what you stand for, your faith, your truth, your wisdom, your knowledge in your career, or publicly, for example. Maybe you're a writer, or maybe you're trying to get a manuscript published, and this is a time to get your thoughts and ideas out there. So there's this connection between the 3rd and the 10th. This new moon is square Saturn, and Saturn is, at least since the past 2.5 years, it's been in something called your 6th sign. And as we get to the last 2 months of Saturn's time in Pisces, look at what have you been doing around health and wellness, organizing your life, duties and responsibilities, cleaning things out, and really finding your grounding over the past 2.5 years, because you're beginning to come to the end of that story. This new moon squares Saturn. So it says for the next 4 weeks, more is being asked of you to step into a higher level, to clear out your day-to-day life, to focus on your commitments, the rituals, the craft, the practices that you are really important to you, for example. The 3rd, where the new moon is, also evokes the energy of choice. Life comes with a lot of options, but what are we choosing? And with the square to Saturn, we need to be very mature, responsible, and concrete about the choices that we are making over the next four weeks. That said, Mars, which is a relationship planet for you, it's not a relationship, it's a planet that talks about home and family, roots and foundation. It's in your 7th sign for the next 6 weeks. Depending on who you are, depending on who is in your life, if you are in a partnership or not in a partnership, Mars it's not the 7th sign. This is why I'm like doing it's in your 4th. So over the next 4 weeks, let's back up. Over the next 6 weeks, Mars is in your sign of home and family, roots and foundation. And Mars is a relationship planet. That's what I started to say earlier. Mars is a relationship planet, and that energy of relationships is focused on home and family. So maybe if you're in a relationship, it's about you and another person, really putting the energy and focus on your home and your living situation. If you're not in a relationship, maybe this is a time to look at the relationships that you have with your family members, including your parents. Mars in the 4th, which happens every 2 years for you, can sometimes make it really busy in the home environment. Maybe you're moving, maybe you're packing up boxes. Mars is not a quiet. It's like things are happening, people are visiting, or maybe you're preparing for a move. But this energy is there all the way until the end of January. I think it's like January 26th, Mars gets into Aquarius. And so it's just a busy time. So the question is, how are you going to use this energy? Do you want to focus on making changes to your home environment? Do you want to clean things out? Do you want to start home improvement? Maybe not this time, maybe in January, but that could be how some of this energy is for you. Scorpio. So Mars is your planet, and Mars is squared Neptune right now. Mars has just gone into Capricorn. So over the last 6 weeks, Mars is in Sagittarius. Sagittarius for you is your sign of money, income, material stability, and security. So it was a very concrete time for you over the last 4 weeks to focus on your material life. That shifts. Mars is now in Capricorn. Now, the irony is that Capricorn is an earth sign. You had that sort of earth energy with money, material needs for the past 6 weeks, but Mars does a very different type of work when it's in Capricorn. So for the next 6 weeks, it's about being focused, organized, taking the lead. Mars takes 2 years to go through your astrology for everybody. And so 2 years ago, Mars was in Capricorn, for example. And so this could be a time where it's busy, but it's busy where you need to be the parent or the authority in the room, so to speak. Or maybe you need to get more clear about the words that you're using, or the authority of the words that you're using, or the choices that you're making. Maybe you want to focus on education for the next 6 weeks. You're taking classes, you're doing workshops, you're learning things, because it's also a time to really take that energy of Mars and to focus it on the mind and to learn new skills and to learn new things. For example, if you're a writer, the next 6 weeks, could be a time when you're sharing a manuscript, starting a manuscript, or getting your words and ideas out there, or even you're a public speaker, for example. But again, it's a bit of a busy time. So then let's go back to that Sagittarius New Moon that I've been talking about in the introduction. So Sagittarius for you is your second sign of money, income, material stability, and security. It's what you value, whether that's literal, like the things that you really monetarily value, or that could be existential and philosophical. Do you even, for example, value yourself? There has been a bit of a pileup of planets in this part of the sky already the past few weeks. Again, Mars was in this space for the last 6 weeks. So you already have put some time into this part of your astrology. A new moon, which is different than Mars, a new moon says that this is your short-term focus and priority for the next 4 weeks. And this is where the energy of new beginnings and renewal is happening for you. So from a very practical standpoint, perhaps you're looking at spending over the next 4 weeks. You're looking at purchases. You're buying new things. You're thinking about, if you're purchasing it when it's in the second, it's typically to buy something that creates a sense of resource and stability for you in your immediate life. We had that, we had the Gemini full moon just 2 weeks ago, so that was also a financial moon for you as well. But that said, the next 4 weeks are a time for you to really get clear about your money, your spending, your sense of value and worth. Now, this new moon, it squares Saturn. And Saturn is a really interesting energy because it's saying you need to take something seriously over the next 4 weeks. And Saturn has been in something called your fifth sign since March of 2023. So this is also about taking yourself and taking your talents seriously over the next 4 weeks. Saturn on some level has been saying to you, who are you, Scorpio? Who are you? And who are you not? We all have to grow and mature and step into a greater sense of who we are, not on an ego level, but really to grow and mature as a person, as an individual, to again take our talents and take ourselves seriously. And if this new moon is about value and self-worth and how we invest in our lives, then there's some sort of tension between Saturn and Neptune that's also saying, but what about you? How do you make this happen? Or how do you even get in the way, for example? But that said, this new moon, the energy points towards Jupiter in Cancer. Cancer is your ninth sign, so this could be a time where it's very philosophical for you for the next 4 weeks. You need to be very clear about what you believe in, what you stand for. Is bringing in more energy of education and travel. So as you start the year, you're really looking towards the horizon. Maybe you're planning trips, but maybe you're really focusing your education and yourself as you go into the new year. Sagittarius. So happy birthday, Sagittarius. There is a lot going on in the sky right now. I know it's your birthday, or even if you're Sagittarius rising, it is the refresh and restart to your personal calendar. So let's start with Mars. It's just left Sagittarius where it was for the last 6 weeks. And it's good to look back a little bit, because when Mars is in our sign, or even our rising sign, it's about really taking the initiative, really feeling the energy of Mars, hitting the proverbial gas, so to speak, so that we can take action and lead in our lives. Mars changing signs takes that energy, now it puts it towards money, income, material stability, and security. So your short-term focus and priority for the next 6 weeks, where the energy of the chart will be in your sign of money and income. Maybe over the next 6 weeks, that's literal. You're looking at spending. You're purchasing things to create stability and security for yourself. You're looking at the things that you own. You're working towards a goal and ambition, or maybe it's philosophical, for example. It's self-worth and value, and Mars is really helping you to find a sense of confidence and esteem and to refine that self-worth and value. Then there is the Sagittarius New Moon. So this is the Sagittarius New Moon's got a lot going on. Now, I said this last week, and I've been saying something to the effect for the past few weeks, but this is a time, Sagittarius, that's really activating major points in your astrology. It's about you. It's about relationships and other people. It's about your home environment, your family, your living situation. It's about your career, your public life, and your public reputation. This new moon is a reset, a restart, and a refresh for Sagittarius. It says that over the next 4 weeks, it's a time of new beginnings. This new moon also points towards the solar eclipse that we had on September 21st. And that part of your astrology is your public life, your public reputation, it's your career. And that's where the energy of the eclipse was seated back in September. So it says something about your professional life, your career, your public life will see a shift and change over a 6-month period. So roughly from September to roughly to February. And one of the key times in which this can happen is December. It is for you to see what is really happening, unfolding in your life over the next 4 weeks, but it could be crucial. It could be something that's really shifting the direction of your life. It could be leaning into these changes that I was referring to with your career. It could be even leaning into a time of new beginnings, and even with the full moon that we had 2 weeks ago about relationships. But this new moon is square Saturn. And just remember, and I know we've been talking about this periodically over the last 2.5 years, but Saturn has been in your sign of home and family for the last 2.5 years. And so family has been a priority. Your home environment has been a priority. And so Saturn is saying that this is a time to get very clear, more responsibility, major or perhaps even personal events in your life. But it's also to begin to see what has this time of Saturn in Pisces been for you, because this could be a lunar month where something is actually becoming real and concrete for you. Capricorn, so Saturn is your planet, and Saturn has got 2 more months of its time left in Pisces. And I probably said this last week, so I'll say it again. What have you learned? Since March of 2023, your long-term focus and priority, your life has been through the lens of Pisces. Your faith, your truth, your meaning, your compassion, your empathy, opening up, feeling things, your intuition, but also a part of your astrology that talks about your voice and how you speak and how you listen and how you communicate, the choices that you make. We've all lived this time differently. You've lived this time differently over the past 2.5 years. I wanted to say that because we have a Sagittarius new moon this week on the 19th, and this new moon is in something called your 12th. It says that for the next 4 weeks, and around this time each year roughly, you'll have a new moon in the 12th. It says you're coming to the end of a personal cycle. This is the end of one cycle, one revolution of the sun around your chart, and now it's time to let something go, to release and to prepare for when the sun goes into Capricorn, and more importantly, when we have the Capricorn new moon in January. The next 4 weeks, it's not just about letting go and release, but it's also about your spirituality, your intuition, your need for more. How do you fulfill your life? Because typically Capricorn is really great at ticking the boxes or checking the boxes of the things we're supposed to do on a physical and material level. we're still material and physical beings. We need to take care of our physical lives, but don't forget about something more, your spiritual life, your desire to open up, to ask big questions, and maybe to really open up to a more subtle side of yourself. This new moon is putting you in the crossroads. So it's a little bit of an potentially event-oriented month over the next 4 weeks. And that is really setting you up for some shifts as you go into the new year. Then we also have Mars in Capricorn. So Mars has gone into Capricorn. Capricorn is you. And this is a time of renewal and new beginnings that really sort of speeds things up as you go into the new year. Now, when Mars is in your sign, you have the power, but you also need to take the power and take the action. It says that you need to step forward, you need to use this energy, you need to put it towards something, and whatever has been sort of languishing, which is ironic because we're having a new moon in the 12th for you, which sort of means things are quiet, you need to release something, but at the same time you have one foot in a new life. So you might feel the push and pull this week between an old life and letting something go, and the new life that really wants to come in and take you into the new year. Aquarius. Think about it for a second. Aquarius. So Saturn is your planet, and Saturn has 2 more months left in Pisces. So you are actually beginning to come to the end of a personal chapter. I think I talked about this last week, surely. And this has been the last 2.5 years of your life. And it's for you to begin to reflect back. Who were you at the start of 2013? 2013. Who were you at the start of 2023? Who are you now? What has happened in the last 2 years? Saturn in Pisces, I know I've said this at length at this point for the past 2.5 years, but this has been such a time that on one hand, to look at your values, to look at how you invest time in your life, the things that are material for you, but also really opening up to an even deeper and spiritual side for you, and making sure that your spiritual values and your material values are actually in sync. Even though this new moon is not in Aquarius or not in Pisces, but it's bringing the energy of you into the mix. So we have a Sagittarius new moon, and it's in something called your 11th. It's your friends, it's your community, it's your social network, your social circle, but it's also a space that opens you up towards the future. A new moon in the space for the next 4 weeks, perhaps it's about your community, you're getting involved in groups, you're getting involved in social issues and social causes. Maybe it's about your social circle. There are things that are happening with friendships. And again, with the question about values, what do you value? And even this new moon can be about looking towards the future and getting very clear about where you're steering yourself towards. Well, it needs to be something that's really, truly in alignment with your values, for example. The new moon points towards Jupiter and Cancer. Now, Cancer is something called your 6th sign. If you have a vision, and Aquarius can sometimes be a very visionary sign, then what are the concrete steps that you're going to take in order to make it happen? If you have a future, like the resolutions that you have for 2026, then again, what concrete actions are you going to take as you go in the new year? So this could be a new year, a new moon that really talks about, showing up on time and everything being in alignment with your values. It could be about service. It could be about helping people and getting involved in a social issue or social cause. Then there's Mars. Then there's Mars in Capricorn. Sorry, it's just like a really dry time of the year. Then there's Mars in Capricorn. Mars is coming to the end of your astrology. And for the next 6 weeks, the action, the power, the drive is happening internally and spiritually. Typically, when Mars gets to the end of this part of our astrology, we need to learn to detach and let go. We need to take that action, which maybe for the last almost 2 years has been towards more of our wants, our needs, our desires, and put it towards something greater. So for the next 6 weeks, you can prioritize, short-term prioritize your spirituality, or maybe it's to let something go, to not be so attached to something, because it's, when Mars gets into Aquarius at the end of January, it's the start of a new cycle. It's also, Mars will be in the same sign as Pluto, which I don't think that was the case 2 years ago, and it's really activating this new time with Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto in Capricorn, Pluto in Aquarius. So last but not least, I apparently am going long this week too, Pisces. So Pisces, Jupiter is your planet, and Jupiter is actually getting a lot of action this week. We have a Sagittarius New Moon on December 19th, and Sagittarius is something called your career sign. So this new moon is saying that for the next 4 weeks, the area that you are going to see renewal or shifts or new beginnings is your professional life, your public life, the title after your name. Maybe you're seeing changes as you get into the end of the year, and maybe even changes in your job, for example. If you're looking for work as you go into the new year, this is your lunar month, because you have the energy in support of you, for example. If you're looking ahead for the new year, then what do you want to achieve? Where's the maturity and responsibility going to come into your life? Because this part of your astrology says we need to continue to grow and mature. We need to take steps up into greater duties and responsibilities. Now, the energy of the new moon points towards Jupiter and Cancer. Cancer is something called your fifth sign. So it says that you're getting noticed or getting recognized, new moon, for your talents and gifts, your abilities, for the things that set you apart from perhaps your colleagues or people in your field. And it could also mean getting that spark back for, like, what do you want to do in the world? What do you want to be when you grow up? This new moon points towards you in the sense that this new moon squares Saturn in Pisces and Neptune in Pisces. It's just been a heavy, I'm being honest, a heavy time over the past 2.5 years with Saturn and Pisces. Now, Saturn has 2 more months left in Pisces. It continues to be in a space in your life where it's asking you to take on more, to put things in order, to be the mature person, to take the lead, and to really push yourself up higher in your life. But maybe that's come at an expense, and maybe this new moon really helps you to get back into the things that light you up and give you joy, that have a sense of creativity for you. Then there's Mars in Capricorn. Mars is in your 11th sign of friends, community, society, humanity, social issues, and social causes. So Mars is always where are things happening, where's the drive and the power of the astrology, and where is our short-term focus and priority? Well, it's your friends and community. So maybe you're using this energy to connect more with like-minded people, or maybe something is coming up between you and a friend, or maybe you're using Mars to really align yourself with your goals and aspirations for the future. You can use Mars to network, especially network to help your professional life, but Mars is really trying to get you to look towards the future. So there you go. That is your look at the astrology this week, December 15th through 21st, 2025. So we've got one more week left of 2025, which is kind of crazy that's happening. But here we are. You can join me on Saturday, the 20th of December, and for my webinar, The Astrology of 2026. And if you cannot join me live at 11, don't worry, you can still sign up and get the replay. So I will really focus on the year ahead and my take on it, and the big themes and the months that we really need to look towards, and also the sign-by-sign guide. So go to my website, empoweringastrology.com. You could also sign up for my newsletter. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Spotify, I'm on YouTube, and I appreciate you all. So thank you all, and I will see you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.